Hello and welcome. You are watching Performance Check Live, and I'm hanging out with my good buddy Lloyd from the Jarl DM. So to quickly explain to those people who are just watching on YouTube and didn't witness the other shitstorm that happened over on Facebook, me and Lloyd tried to go live together because you can now do that. And it imploded, and my face was imposed on Lloyd's face, and it was the stuff of nightmares. It's something you never want to see, ever, ever, ever.
Hell,
How's it
hell on
going,
earth.
man?
Yeah, good. That so you have to do it with your phone, seemingly, and like that's dumb. First of all, why can't I do it on my computer? Um, and secondly,
Yeah.
dumb. Why can't I do it on my computer? And like it just, yeah, it was garbage. Pretty dumb. I didn't like it at all. Deeply disappointed.
No, I think this is probably a better tool for hanging out. Google Hangouts. Who would have thought that Google Hangouts would be better than any other like option out there? Who would have thought? Um, so yeah, me and Lloyd were going to go live on Facebook to talk about a bunch of stuff, and that didn't work. So now we're here to talk about it here today. So Lloyd, you did begin making some points before I interrupted the stream and then distracted you from the stream. So let's start from the top. Let's
Right.
talk. What were you
Yes.
going to say first?
So I was talking about settings, D&D settings, and like how Faerun and most D&D settings that I see tend to be set in the high medieval sort of period where there are long swords and plate mail and horses, and that's the tech level. And that seems to be the go-to tech level for any fantasy setting. I guess it's a similar
Sure.
tech level to Middle Earth, sort of like late period medieval sort of stuff. Um, and I was just kind of wondering why that was, why that's the case, and why there are so few D&D settings that aren't in that time. You know what I mean? Like I can think of Dark Sun as
Yeah.
one. I can think of like that's kind of it. Like I don't know. Eberron, I guess maybe is a bit more advanced, but Eberron's garbage. I think.
I agree. Like, but to be honest, like I think most people, especially in the communities that we operate in, have come from heavy D&D based things. So that's probably why we see most settings being posted around be D&D esque games. Um, or are you talking generally across the entire market?
No, I think yeah, also across the entire market. But I think like you see people make settings even for like make their own settings for D&D, and they tend to be set in this sort of tech level as well. And maybe a little bit further on, some of the firearms, maybe a little bit further back. But even the custom like homebrew settings tend to be in this time period. I think 10. There are ones out there certainly that are not like Marquise had that Kandwaya thing, which was Bronze Age and that kind of thing. But generally, I think that the case is most of the settings tend to end up in that sort of standard D&D late medieval sort of period.
Mm. Yeah, and I guess, but then I don't think it's just. I don't know. I think it extends further than role playing games because, like, if you go to like if you go into Waterstones or W. Smiths or any bookshop, and then you go to the fantasy section, there will be a wall of it, and the majority of it will be medieval fantasy. It will all be that kind of thing. So I think it's a symptom that extends beyond role playing games. I think it's something that, and there, it's part of the culture, I
Yeah,
guess. I
I
don't
mean,
know.
like the biggest thing in the world right now is Game of Thrones, and that is set in a similar time period, late medieval.
Yeah, yeah.
And I guess it's familiar, maybe, it's like, oh, that's the go-to. That's fantasy means knights and swords and stuff. I don't think it has to, though, at all. I think there's lots of things you can do outside of that time period, but we don't see it very often.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, I mean, what can we do to remedy that then, Lloyd?
We can make our own. Yay.
We can make our own. Oh my goodness me! Are we going to talk about this?
Yeah, I think
We're going to do it.
briefly.
Let's talk about it. The other day, I I actually sent over a link to some stuff that I've been writing to Lloyd just so he could give it a read, a once over, and we were just talking, and then, as we've discussed before on our podcast, the Dice Cast, we should really make our own setting. So over the course of 2 hours, we made a setting, literally, and me and Lloyd, we talk using voice clips on Facebook. So just like 2 hours of 1 minute voice clips of back and forth, and we had created a setting free from the constraints of the medieval fantasy,
free from the tyranny,
the tyranny and the control.
The drudgery.
The drudgery. Well, it was a challenge, wasn't it, Lloyd? Like, we wanted to challenge ourselves and see, like, how can we separate all of that stuff from the stuff that we also really enjoy about that stuff. So how do we keep the basically core principles of role-playing games / D&D, but in like a completely different zone? And I don't know how to even begin to describe it. So we decided that it's best to think about the time period. Medieval was the thing that we were kind of getting stuck on first of all. So what time period did we end up with, Lloyd?
So we talked about two. I had suggested that either we go a good bit further on or a good bit further back. So I think I put forward, like, we go to like the 1800s, sort of like gaslight and top hats and long coats, or we go way back. And so we ended up going way back to like the Stone Age, before there's bronze even. We talked about that for a long time. So I ran a game a long time ago, set in this world. It was called, I can't remember, Metal Serpent or something. And it was just a kind of basic idea at that stage. I wanted to do some Stone Age D&D and see what happened. And so we got talking about that idea, and now we have quite a bit more to go on, I think, which is definitely nice.
And we have a working title.
Yes. One.
Do you want me to say it?
Yes.
So the working title for this Stone Age D&D setting is Star Metal, because metal is something that is a point of contention within the setting. You can imagine that Stone Age level technology is prevalent throughout this world, and the race known that we haven't like decided on all the names yet, but referring to them as the people, I believe. Is that correct, Lloyd? Standard people, human beings, using stone-based weapons. They're basically a hunter-gatherer kind of race. Then all of a sudden, what happens, Lloyd?
So they're all just sitting around using bones as tools and like making flint weapons, and then out of nowhere, a tribe comes along, an army of people who have iron weapons. They have swords and axes and armor, and so they're basically gods in comparison. Their weapons are incredibly dangerous, very sharp. Their armor is tough, and so it's very hard to punch through iron with a bone. And so the crux of the setting is going to be fleeing from that army, and fleeing as far and as fast as you can. And just hoping you don't get caught, because they're terrifying. These bright ones, we call them.
Yes, the bright ones. Their name given to them as the light reflecting off their tarnished metal armor as they come across the hill. Now, the people aren't the only beings in this world. They're basically, if you just imagine cavemen, human beings. The bright ones are, I'm guessing, a little bit more advanced, but still humanoid and human-looking. They're a bit pale.
Yeah.
And we already know a fair bit about them, but let's not go into that just yet. There are also different types of races in the world, and I think we should first of all begin by talking about stone ones, because they're quite
stone ones.
Do you remember the stone ones?
Yeah. So we're talking
I'm
about
open the document because
Talking about little squat people who live in the mountains, I think, is what you're talking about, and they have the knowledge, the necessary skills to smelt metal. And somehow the Bright Ones got access to that knowledge. That's going to be a secret for now. It's going to be secret for now. But basically, these are the dwarves. They have access to many of these secrets. How to smelt metal, how to like forge it, and things like that. But they have fallen under the sway of the Bright Ones, or at least most of them have. And so now they serve them mostly. So that is one option.
Absolutely.
We've also got, and this will be a shock, I think, to everyone listening, is that we're going to include a lizard people in our setting. So these are going to be called the Scaled Ones. So we just went with this basic naming premise because we figured like it's an illiterate world, and so the races are just going to be like, oh, those people who look that way, you know. And so we have the Scaled Ones who are like this ancient sort of lizard race that will fill in for the Dragonborn, although without the fire breathing, most likely. And so that will be another race. They're going to have like their own culture, very different to the people. Their own kind of magic is the hope. What else we got? Got the scary one. What are they called?
Oh God, yeah. So I tried to open the doc, but I couldn't find it. So I'm just going off memory here. Which ones are you talking about?
The Slender Ones is what we called them, I think.
The Slender Ones, yes, because this is Lloyd's favorite thing to do, and this is no exception. We are the Slender Ones are essentially the elves, the prehistoric elves, and they are feral. And they are unstoppable. They're basically we have decided that every single race is going to have their own access to their own types of magic, which means locking down certain classes for certain races. And we've decided that elves aren't going to be playable. They are a primary antagonist. Which seems to be the sort of like the running sort of like trend at the moment, I've noticed throughout the community. But I believe, Lloyd, you were the one that started this, so we're allowed to keep using that trend. But they're absolutely terrifying. And what makes them even more terrifying is that the elves are the only ones with access to divine magic. Which means that the terrifying, unstoppable, feral elves are also the only ones that are able to heal themselves on the fly. Like with this cloth, like with Lloyd's Adventures in Middle-earth, healing is going to be something that is incredibly rare. The only way that you're going to be is the old-fashioned way, the long way, the lots of rest, maybe a few herbs, and genuine medicine, like which basically, think of Stone Age medicine.
Yeah,
that's what you come up with.
So you're thinking about a time when like people didn't know what the sky was and what the sun was, and you know what mountains were made of. Like it's a time of like total mystery at the world, and so imagine the total lack of knowledge about healing in that world, and that's what you're dealing with. So if you get badly injured, you may just die of an infection. So one of the things we're keen on is that this should be difficult and a struggle, and survival should be a big focus on it. And that's like not just the survival as in like not getting killed, but it's like finding food and like keeping your tools, because you know bone weapons and stone weapons and tools break frequently. So that's a big thing. Finding somewhere safe to sleep, all of this sort of stuff is like a big concern. And because you're going to be moving with your tribe, basically fleeing from these Bright Ones, you're not just caring about yourself, you're caring about like this whole clump of people, some of whom are going to be defenseless, you know, and non-combatants certainly. And so you're making decisions from day one for lots of people, which is scary and wonderful, I think.
Yes. And also, we are hoping to put the emphasis on such conundrums, not only making decisions for people that you are trying to save from the Bright Ones and their dreaded advance across your homeland, but also having to being able to hunt. Essentially, hunting is going to be a big thing. Survival is going to be a big thing. Creating your own weapons, creating your own simple weapons from stone and wood. You're going to be expected to make your own bows and stuff, and we're throwing around a few ideas about how we're going to do this, but nothing's set in stone as of yet, Lloyd. But it's a Stone Age joke. No, never mind.
Another thing that we had talked about is that magic is going to be dangerous, very dangerous, which is a favorite of mine. That it's corrupting, it's dangerous, it could destroy you. There's like a backstory involved. We didn't mention that the other race that's involved are tieflings, which again probably will shock you considering that I ran human-centric setting. But we have
what are they called, Lloyd?
The horned ones.
The horned.
Yes. So we talked a little bit about it, but we have this idea for a backstory involving the tieflings and what happened with them. And so they're another option. They're the ones who can control the magic best of all. But you'll find that like none of them do it particularly well, and it's quite dangerous to cast spells. And so that can be dangerous.
Very dangerous. And I think also I like the idea that the tieflings don't even particularly like doing it an awful lot. The tieflings are, and as a species, share dreams. That's something else that's a little bit new about them. They all share similar dreams, if not identical dreams, about mysterious and rather disturbing things. Now, with this being a prehistoric setting, we would be remiss if we weren't to talk about other threats that the world presents. Not only is it going to be dangerous because of survival in harsh conditions, difficult terrain, bad weather, we're going to be up against some dinosaurs. There's going to be a whole bunch of dinosaurs, which incidentally, we've decided that as the scaled ones are going to be the only ones who have access to druidic abilities. Is that right, Lloyd? Like yes. they're going to solely be able to. They're the only ones that can interact and potentially tame dinosaurs, which are going to be a huge threat.
Yeah.
Now, throughout this world, there is going to be remnants of what came before. It's something that a lot of people like doing, and with good reason. It gives your world depth, and it gives you like an interesting palette to work with. So I like you to imagine prehistoric wastelands and jungles and tundras, but then amidst these things, strange reminders of an age that came before. I like you to imagine a Colosseum, and inside that Colosseum, a Tyrannosaurus Rex has become trapped, and you accidentally Colosseum encounter.
Yep.
What was the other one we were talking about? We were talking about a giant crocodile, giant prehistoric crocodile as well, weren't we, Lloyd?
Yeah. Just the idea that dinosaurs are abundant, but also that there's sort of a sort of like Skull Island feel where lots of the animals are like unusually large, and so like King Kong, Godzilla, like enormous creatures that like wander the land. Maybe not quite as big as Godzilla, but certainly huge. And they're everywhere.
Yeah.
Frequent enough to be a big problem. And yeah, so you're looking at danger all over the place. Snakes living in rivers, huge snakes, all that sort of stuff. And then we had also talked about there being monsters, which are different to these animals and these dinosaurs. There's something that had happened a long time ago. This remnant civilization maybe suggests that there was once more to the world. And so often in those places you will find strange creatures mutated by magic. And that's where you'll find your monsters, your more traditional monsters.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think if we had to do elevator pitch with this, the only thing that I can really come up with is that Star Metal is essentially Savage Land meets the Banner Saga. I think.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the best way to put it across it. / Skull Island for the monsters, and there's also going to be some classical D&D monsters in there, but only the ones that we think fit in this setting. For example, we have an idea that perhaps dragons are in there, but there's going to be orcs in there, for example. I don't think. Do we agree on that, Lloyd?
No, we didn't say yet, but I don't think so. Although who knows?
Oh, I thought maybe I dreamt that then. Maybe okay. Well, maybe orcs is still in there. Who knows?
Well,
but maybe
part of the process is that you're going west, I guess, or east, one of the directions, north, south. You're going somewhere to avoid these bright ones, and so you don't know what's there, right? You're a tribe, and you probably have a roaming area that's pretty small, and so now you're moving on this journey further than you've ever been before into places you've never been before. So maybe you're from the savannah, and you're traveling for weeks, and then you end up in the jungle. What the hell's a jungle? What are all these trees doing here? And who lives here? And so you could get there, and there could be all these other people who orcs or hobgoblins or minotaurs or whatever it might be, living there, and you've never even dreamed that something like that could exist. So it leaves it open for GMs, certainly, like if they're running the setting to put whatever they want in to some extent, people-wise. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting. So I just see there's people in the chat here, and they're saying lots of stuff, but particularly Orpy Geography and Ben Fisher both kind of say that race restrictions for classes can be difficult. I think that's probably true, but I would say play something else if you don't want to play this. That has always been my approach with Iskloft. Like you can play a human fighter, or you can play something else. Like you don't have to play it, and that's not trying to be snooty, because I know they're just being genuine and and nice about asking it. But like that's always been my approach with these kind of settings, and when I run sort of historical games, like you don't have to play it, But if you want to play it, then there are limitations. And I always find that limitations make a game much more interesting for me than, like, I don't want a billion options. I find that awful. I don't want a billion options. I want 3 options most of the time, it's fine for me. But I just think it's good to make the setting kind of funneled and make it a bit more clear on what it's exactly about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with this in particular, I'm going around to your way of thinking it for this setting anyway, because I've never ever done that. Usually I try and keep the options open, but for this, what I really like is that it really the difference between the cultures of the world, where they all have their own very strong identity because they all have their very different paths. And I like that. And I think it puts the generic class, which I really like, the people, human beings, essentially, at, I think, a slight disadvantage against the others. And I kind of like that. I kind of like that we'll be following the underdogs. Now, the others, up at the Saurian, the lizard people, the tieflings, the stone ones aren't going to be playable. But I think the thing that we're starting off with is just the, or do we?
Yeah, I would think that because we're going to just basically get some basics down, run some one-shots and see what happens. But I think our first approach would be you can be humans, you could be people, the people. And then we go with that for a while, and then we might run another one, where you are the scaled ones or the horned ones. And then I think if you down the line, if you wanted to run a game with all different character options, then you could say that 3 different or 4 different even people have been fleeing in the same direction, and they've met at a crossroads, an oasis, something, and now they're moving together. And it's interesting. It's going to be much more difficult because you're going to have a much bigger caravan behind you. But it'll be interesting because you have to mix all these different peoples who are very, very different, culturally really different languages, totally different customs and stuff. So I think that's going to be really interesting. I really want to see negotiations happening when neither person can speak the other person's language. I never see that in D&D. Everyone just has common, and it's fine in a way, but you never really have an issue speaking to any NPC ever. And I think that's interesting. And that's like a real thing that happened for so much of history in our world. Yeah, I'm keen to see that.
I really like that. I think, like, I literally just thought of this, but like, I think if, because I thinking about it, like, it is obviously if there's the normal human beings do have a disadvantage in comparison to the others. But what I think would be really cool if mechanically we can sum, and I will have to work this out, but wouldn't it be really great if, yeah, all right, the Saurians, the lizard folk, the scaled ones have the druidic abilities or whatever, and so on and so forth. Beings, the people, are just known for their adaptability, like real human beings. Like we are incredibly adaptable, and that's why we've lasted this long anyway. Like, so if we can make that something into a mechanic where they get something that makes them like able to, you know, always persevere in some way, then I think that might be a cool thing for them to have. I don't know what exactly, but like that's just a. This is all very rough, by the way, for those watching. Like, we've had 1 2-hour conversation about this. We didn't talk about this stream. We kind of just started it, and I'm just sort of remembering as we're going.
Yeah. So I think it could be cool to see you learn new skills. So as you're going through, and you know, you've been a hunter your whole life, and so you have a certain set of skills, but you come to a jungle, you've never been to a jungle before, and then you can, like, by trying things, learn new skills, you know? And maybe that skill is like, you know, gathering water in the jungle, you know, from leaves or like out of trees, or maybe it's like learning which frogs are poisonous or whatever it might be, you know. But like you can write that in as a new skill or proficiency or something, you know. And I like the idea that you can like learn stuff like that, and maybe that's something humans are good at, is like that they can learn stuff quicker than others.
I also know how I want the lizard folk to talk like this, human. Like I that's like we're going for like an almost like B movie kind of sort of way that some of the races come across, and the lizard folk are very staccato in the way they speak. Just like very vivid. I had a very vivid idea of what it would be like to talk with them.
Yeah.
So like maybe eventually some of them are able to communicate, because I do like the idea of the language barrier as well. I like that quite a lot, and them having to unite against a common threat as well, I think is also is on the cards, definitely.
Yeah.
Whether that can be done or not is another matter, because that would be part of the game, isn't it, trying to unite everyone against the bright ones. And the bright ones I'm really excited about, but I suppose are we not going to talk about what they can do, Lloyd? Because
no,
I don't really think we should.
Yeah, we'll keep that a secret for now.
Like, they're quite special.
Yes.
They're quite special, and I really like them. And just as all the others have their own special kind of link to a certain part of the game, the bright ones have a link to a particularly nasty thing. That's all I will say.
Yeah.
And they're great at using it. Star Metal coming soon. We'll run some games, won't we, Lloyd?
Yes, we will. Yeah, hopefully run a bunch of games, test a bunch of stuff. I have lots of vague mechanics in my head that I want to try and see what happens with, and we'll test them and see what works and what doesn't, and slowly but surely it will become a thing.
I already know what my first character is going to be in it, Lloyd.
Go on.
It's going to be, well, I know his name, I know what he'll look like, and it's how I described him to you before. It's very kind of like stereotypical Stone Age stuff, but this kind of hunter dude, he's got spears on his back, he's got like tomahawk or something, he has a saber cat cloak, like with the head being the hood or whatever, and his name is Kin Killer.
Yep, that's pretty solid.
Pretty cool, right? I like him.
I recently watched Apocalypto, and in that they all have these great names for all the characters. They're all like Smoke Frog and, you know, Jaguar Paw, all these like little things that you would see in the rainforest, and they're just like that a lot as a naming convention. I think something like that is a good, and King Killer is similar. Like, it's a good naming convention, and it differentiates it a lot from D&D. Like, I don't know that they would even have family names, you know, because the family is the people you live with, you know. You live in a tribe, and yeah, that's how it works. I'm gonna have to go, Rob, because I have a game in 10 minutes.
Yeah, yeah, I literally saw that as well. Well, I'm not sure hangout, but that was just to say that we wanted to hang out. We wanted to talk about Star Metal, which is something that me and Lloyd are working on. It's going to be pretty exciting. and we have some other stuff to talk about in the future as well. But I think that'll do for now. So say your piece, Lloyd, before we go.
Yeah, bye guys. Lloyd and Jarl DM on the YouTube. See you later.
Thanks for watching, guys. I hope that all of your performances are up to standard. Stop the broadcast.